Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining Paradise on our conversation about wood ducks this evening. So this is coinciding with our wood duck box building project. Paradise has a goal this year of building 25 wood duck boxes to place around the land that contains the Olentangy River, just to try and give these birds kind of heads up on, or the advantage in breeding this season in 2021 here. So like I said, our goal was 25 boxes, and we have definitely met that goal for sure for the season. So the project's already a success, but we wanted to talk about wood ducks with a professional here. That's why we have Mauro with us. Anne has been studying birds since 2015 when she graduated from OSU. She's worked with songbirds and shorebirds, wading birds, and waterfowl, which is quite the mix of birds there. Anne is currently in Illinois, but coming back to Ohio. She's going to join us in the Buckeye State here very soon. And recently she's been working in Naples, Florida, with all kinds of bird species as an avian biologist. So that is super, super exciting stuff. And what I'm going to do is just throw it to Anne here. And Anne, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
All right. Hey, it is all yours.
Okay, thank you. So I may stop my video sometime after I introduce what I'm going to talk about, just because I may have limited signal where I'm at. But hi, my name is Anne Mauro. And I will be talking today about wood ducks. So I'll share my screen. Okay, so can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, today I'm going to talk about wood duck box monitoring, but along with that, some about their behavior and where to best place the boxes. So just again, a little about me. I have been studying quite a bit of birds, and I most recently was in Naples, Florida, looking at water birds. So it was shorebirds, wading birds. The picture on the left is of me rescuing a magnificent frigate bird. So I did a lot of bird rescues too for any birds that were injured or sick. And recently, I've also been working more with waterfowl. So last month, I worked with banded mallards at the University of Arkansas of Monticello. And now I'm actually working with Western Illinois University, looking at how lesser scaup metabolize their energy. So it's banding scaup on the Mississippi River. Okay, so first off, a lot of people know what wood ducks are because they are so vibrant. I'm not really gonna go into the specifics of how to ID them because there's no other duck that looks quite like them in North America. And that's why they're one of the most popular and why people enjoy monitoring them. Even the females, I think, a lot of the females of bird species look rather dull, but I myself rather enjoy the white teardrop around their eye. I think they're pretty adorable. But what I am going to mention is that most people aren't aware that wood ducks look like this a part of the year. They don't always look like they have that stunning plumage. And this is what we call the eclipse plumage. This happens late summer and ends by October. So what happens here is that they molt all their feathers, starting with their body feathers and then going with their primary feathers or their flight feathers. And actually during this time, a lot of people think that the wood ducks tend to disappear, but they only think that because they can't fly when this happens, because they are molting their flight feathers. So as you can see, that it's quite the difference between that. Even the female looks very different in that one would think that they're a different species. But luckily that ends by October, and then they can fly again. But yeah, just so you know, they are still in the area. They live in Ohio year round, as by this range map, and they live all over the eastern US year round. So they are still there. They're just more difficult to find. Okay, so now their behavior. This is really important to mention because it helps to know a thing or two about wood duck behavior to know how to place their boxes. So I'm going to see if I can play this video clip, or if you can hear it. They aren't very vocal birds. Let's see if I can find it. But they do have a noise. They do have a quack when they take off. They're not as vocal as mallards. Can you hear that?
I think so.
Okay. Well, anyways, if you can't hear it, it sounds like a squeaky toy. And I encourage you to look it up on YouTube. Right now I'm just playing a YouTube video, but it's really more of a squeak than a quack, much different than a mallard. So when you're out there looking for wood ducks, it helps to know what they sound like too. So that's a good tip. And also something unique about wood ducks is that why we're building these nest boxes for them is because they do live in forests. So they have a broad tail, a short and broad wings for flying through the trees for that reason. So they are built for these conditions. And we also, they're dabbling ducks. We have dabbling ducks and diving ducks. So divers, just some examples are the canvasback and scaup that I'm working with. So those will take long dives into the water, mainly eating fish, and they'll pop up pretty far from where they took off. Dabbling ducks, if they take dives, they'll be short, shallow dives. They're not underwater for too long, but they mainly eat food around the surface. So you'll see them swimming on the surface of the water, sticking their full head in, eating food around there. And these birds are very shy and skittish. So it's just something important to keep in mind when monitoring them. So why did these nest boxes become a thing? While these birds are very popular, they're one of the most popular harvested birds other than mallards. There was actually a time where these birds were nearly hunted to extinction. So from the late 1800s to early 1900s, there were only a few breeding pairs left of wood ducks in the eastern US. So if you remember their range map, they were hunted in the same area that people colonized, because back then people were mainly living in the eastern US. So they overlapped with people and they were hunted a lot because there weren't any regulations. And there were also other things going against them, such as with the colonization, there was habitat destruction and forest destruction. And also the loss of beavers. Other forest dependent creatures are helpful to these birds. And it wasn't until 1914 that the Migratory Bird Treaty Act came out. And while that act was very important for all these birds, we'll just focus on wood ducks, that act for the wood ducks prohibited hunting of them. And it wasn't until 1941 that their numbers were recovered enough that they could be hunted again. And also during that time, there's more forest management, and beavers recovered. And the reason I do mention beavers is because these ducks do like nesting at beaver ponds. So they make a big difference with wood duck populations. So they helped a lot too. And I pictured here the duck stamp, because I'm sure a lot of people know what a duck stamp is or have heard of it. But the reason they're so popular is because 98% of funds that go towards duck stamps actually go towards wetland conservation. And for that reason, a lot of people, they'll purchase duck stamps who aren't even hunters just because they want to contribute to conservation. But hunters do need duck stamps to hunt ducks. So now we'll talk about the nest box placement. So one of the important things when placing your nest box is that you want to find suitable habitat. So what I mean by suitable brood habitat is that you want good habitat for the ducklings to grow up. So that's open water. You want the nest box to be within a few hundred yards of open water. And you also want there to be enough vegetation for cover so they can hide from predators or inclement weather. And also, you will find different suggestions on where to place nest boxes depending on the organization or the resource. But I found on the Wood Duck Society that they suggest a steel pole or treated wooden post. So the reason that they suggest this instead of a tree is because, while you can put a box on a tree and that's helpful, it is more likely that a predator can climb up on the trunk into the box. So for that reason, they'll say if you can do a pole or a post, that's preferable. Just for the same reason that it's also preferable to have some kind of predator defense. So in this case, Tennessee has a metal cone, 3 foot in diameter, and that helps against squirrels. And again, I do want to emphasize the open area. So specifically, just some measurements I found is that you want the entrance hole to be 3 to 6 feet away from the ground or the surface of the water. And you want the post of the nest box to be 11 feet from the nearest overhanging branch or 9 feet from the nearest trunk. Now, these are ideal conditions. You might not always be in a spot where you have these ideal conditions. So this is just, if you can do it, that's the preferable way. But of course, not every site is going to be perfect where you can put your nest box. You don't always have the perfect habitat everywhere. And again, I encourage you to look on Ducks Unlimited and the Wood Duck Society to find more specifics, because each place has their own slightly different recommendations. So this is just an example. On the picture on the left, you can see the South Carolina DNR. They have a box on the edge of the water. That's always a good idea. And notice in both of these pictures, the entrance hole is facing the water. So you do want the hole to face the water if you can as well. So the picture on the right, the box is on a tree. You could do that. Wood ducks will still nest in it. Like I said, it's just easier for predators to get in. But if you do put a box in a tree, we suggest that you make a clear pathway for the hen to fly in the box. So if there's any branches in the way of the hole, trim those back. And also, if you do put your box on a tree, make sure that as the tree grows, the box maintains its height on the tree, because you may have to adjust the box as the tree grows. So these boxes, while they may seem like a really simple idea, they have been very instrumental in bringing back wood ducks. And they were actually first designed and studied in the 1930s at a National Wildlife Refuge in Illinois. And they found that out of the 300,000 nest boxes they installed, they produced 100,000 ducklings, which is pretty good. So these boxes, they are very helpful. And this is why we encourage people to go out and make them and put them out. So during the non-breeding season, it is important to monitor and to maintain the box. And this is another thing where I found slightly different suggestions depending on the source. So the non-breeding season is July to February. And at minimum, you really just want to monitor or maintain the box one time from July to February. If you can, once a month. I saw some places suggest once a month, but at minimum, just one time before the breeding season. The big thing you want to do is make sure you clean out old nests and nests of invasive species. So one of the more common invasive species of the area you may encounter are starlings. So they may nest in the nest box, even if the entrance hole is a bit big. They will try to nest in wood duck boxes. So for that, you will want to try to, if you find their nest, definitely get rid of it. You may have to be a little persistent, and they may try more than once until they give up. And also, do make sure that you add a fresh layer of sawdust 3 to 4 inches deep in the bottom of the box for the next year. So for the monitoring season, which is from beginning of March to July, the big thing you want to remember is that wood ducks are susceptible to nest abandonment. They are very sensitive birds. So while other birds like songbirds or bluebirds, it may be okay to check the nest by lifting the side of the box up. We actually suggest against that for wood ducks just because they're so sensitive. So for that reason, I actually suggest using a mirror. So if you could think of like a little small handheld mirror, such as at the end of a compass, using that to check in the entrance, that would be the preferred way. And if there is an active nest, see if you can tell how many eggs there are. It may be hard to tell. And record the adult behavior. So after talking, I talked actually with another biologist that worked at Winus Point up at Lake Erie. And we came up with this protocol together because they are so sensitive. So I have to thank Jessica Schmidt for giving me these tips. But she said that if you find feathers in the nest, the hen has started incubating. So don't monitor the nest up close with a mirror at this point, just because they are so likely to abandon the nest. So as soon as you start to see feathers in it, or as soon as you start to see the hen on the nest, I would monitor the nest box from afar with binoculars. So once you start seeing that incubating behavior, it could take about 28 to 32 days. So after about 30 days, I would use a mirror at the entrance hole just to see if there's any young or unhatched eggs. Unhatched eggs, they actually are normal. So anytime the hen is disturbed, she may take off and kick the eggs in that process, and that will addle them and make them so they're no longer fertile. So it's pretty normal for there to be unhatched eggs. So don't be shocked if you see that. And also, a lot of places for cavity nesting birds suggest for you to tap on the outside of the box. If you know that there's a wood duck nest in that box, we suggest actually don't tap on the outside, just because we really want to try to keep the hen in the box as much as we can. These birds are very sensitive. And if you do, just as a side note on that, if you do happen to get another visitor in the box instead, a screech owl, because sometimes those can nest in wood duck boxes, they're also very sensitive. So they would probably have a very similar protocol, slightly different incubation stage, but they're very sensitive to disturbances too. So once you use a mirror at the entrance hole, and once you determine the number of young, all the other visits should be done from afar with binoculars until you stop seeing nesting activity. And when the nesting is finished, you could continue to monitor once a month if you'd like, just to make sure nothing else establishes a nest in there, or do it quarterly, once every few months. So since these birds are very sensitive, I know not everyone may have a trail camera, but the best thing we would suggest is actually to use a trail camera on the nest box, because we really can't be there all the time to know what's going on. Especially if you do get a predator, it may help to know what predator that was. And this also helps you know what time of day the females leave in the nest. Typically they do forage in the early evenings, but that can always change depending on the habitat and the region. So I wouldn't say that as a rule of thumb for every wood duck hen, but if you have a trail camera, that would give you the best data. Okay, so when looking at a good way to monitor this data and to put something into a database, I did find nestwatch.org, and they are a really good system. So basically, you could put in nest monitoring data from all sorts of North American birds into there. It's from Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So it's a very easy process. Basically, you read this information, a protocol about how to monitor nests. You also read just some information about how they started. You take this quick online quiz, and then you'll get this certificate that you could print out that says that you're a certified nest watcher. And then you could go out, find the nests, record the data, and then this data is actually used by biologists of Cornell. So they'll use this data to figure out how birds are responding to habitat loss, climate change, or any other events in the area. So this data is used all the time. So just something to keep in mind with nestwatch.org. Well, it's a great database. A lot of their protocol is very much geared towards songbirds, which, as I said, they're not as sensitive as wood ducks. So a lot of this is similar, but I'd suggest for you to be even more conservative with the protocol than they suggest. So they want you to check the nest every 3 to 4 days. At most, I would say once every week. So for that reason, yeah, that one would be very different than the protocol, but this is a protocol that they'll recommend. And as you can see, remember where the nest is located. Some of these steps are very much geared towards maybe shrub nesters or other types of nesters, but hopefully you'll remember where you put the nest box. So they do want you to create a Nest Watch nest sheet. So they'll have a data sheet on here that you can do that, but how you'll put that information online is that you'll go to your data up in the right-hand corner, and then you'll click on add a new nest site. This is what the website will look like. And then you can enter the nest location using coordinates or zooming into the map and putting down the nearest address. So if you do have any questions during this process, they're really good about directions and what they mean by different questions. All their information's in slightly different places, but this website's very detailed. So it should walk you through what to do and how to put everything in. And this is an example of what the data sheet will look like. So you'll put the year, the species, a nearest street address or coordinates, and just some information about where you put the box and how wide you made the cavity. And if you do have a question about how to classify the habitat within one arm length, they do have a page where they have directions to what they mean by all of that and all the different codes they mean for putting in those blanks. So right below, you put in the description, they'll have information about the breeding data. So you'll put in your observation for the week, the number of eggs, live young, dead young. And again, there are certain codes they have for what the nest status is, if it's complete or if it's still being made, and what the adults are doing. And also cowbirds, that's mainly geared towards passerines or songbirds. So you won't have to deal with cowbird activity with wood ducks. But if you are using this protocol for bluebirds, then there's a whole section for you to put how many cowbirds eggs there are. And also, since it is so hard to tell with wood ducks, if you don't have a date for the first egg date or the hatch date, it's okay, just leave it blank. They just want to make sure they have everything if you do happen to have something. And this is what I mean by they have definitions for how to put in all the data. So they have different codes for the nest status. So if it is a blank nest box, you put no. If there's nesting materials present but incomplete, so in this case there wouldn't be much of an indent in the nesting materials at all. It's a very shallow hole, then you would put incomplete, and a whole bunch of other codes for adult activity, young status. And this is just an example. They have even more directions than this, but I just wanted to show this so you can see it's a pretty easy to follow protocol, and it's really not too confusing at all. Okay, so once you check the nest, my suggestion would be to record the observations online the day of. So this protocol is kind of gearing out, making sure you have them in at the end of the nesting season. But I record my observations when I'm done checking the nest the day of, and then I enter all the nest summary the day of. In this case, like I said, they want you to visit the nest one last time, so they're assuming you're doing the data at the last minute. That's really your preference. But what they mean by visiting the nest one last time is that once you think that there's no more nesting activity, one visit, 1 week, you still want to go back one last time the next week just to make sure. And also at this time, it's okay to go up to the box with the mirror and to see how many final eggs there are or unhatched young. So just some simple things to consider for nest monitoring. So there's a whole lot more of these on the nestwatch.org, but these are the big ones I could find for wood ducks. So if you don't want to be outside because of the weather, chances are the wood duck doesn't want to be disturbed. So this would include really hot weather, 90 and above, actually even 85 and above, also very windy weather, rainy weather. They don't want to be disturbed. So don't check nests during bad weather. Also, checking nests after dusk, it is more likely that the hen will be on the nest. So it's a bad idea to do it then. And predators, this is one thing to keep in mind. So do be observant and observe your surroundings, who's around you when you check this box. And I mean, a big one about that is squirrels and crows, especially crows because they are very smart. If there are these predators nearby, don't approach the box because they are food motivated. and they know where the food is if you disturb the hen off the nest. So if there are predators, just check with binoculars. And also, as the picture shows from Cornell, don't leave a dead end trail at the nest box. It just makes it a little bit easier for a predator to find the box. I mean, if it's a crow, the crow's honestly going to find the box anyways. But for other predators, other mammalian predators, leave a loop trail. Don't leave a dead end trail. And also, don't spend too much time at the nest. This is it should be a quick process. And like I said, if you can't tell exactly how many eggs there are, don't spend a lot of time trying to count. Be very conservative with the number. So the great thing about nestwatch.org is you could find data from previous years for a whole bunch of different species. So this is just a map of where the nest boxes were that were monitored in 2020, only in Ohio. You could see them all throughout the country too. It only let me show 1 year at a time. That's the only bad thing about it. So they were monitored in other years besides 2020. And from these locations, there were 4 nest boxes monitored, a total of 64 eggs, and 34 of those eggs didn't hatch, but like I said, that is normal. And there were 30 live young. So yeah, it's pretty good data. It was only 4 nest boxes, so hopefully we can increase that number this upcoming year and get some more wood ducks nesting in them. And if you do want any more tips on wood duck nest boxes, there are so many different styles that are even different than the wooden ones. Go on any of these websites. And also, if you become interested in other cavity nesting birds besides wood ducks, Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative has websites and resources for other birds that you can monitor as well. So other than that, if you do come up with any questions, you can ask them now, or if you come up with any later, you can send me an email. And thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you, Anne. And unfortunately, my internet cut out like right when you were talking about the Migratory Bird Act. So I've been frantically trying to get back on this call here. But I do imagine, and I am sure that that your presentation was fantastic. I had a couple questions here just from me, if you don't mind fielding those.
Yeah. And I wondered what happened there. I heard a noise. I didn't know if it was me or you, but it's good to hear that everything on my end went through.
Yeah, the meeting kept keeping on, so so I'm very happy about that. Hey, as a bird bander, and maybe you covered this, how does somebody get into bird banding itself? How do they get into the process?
Yeah, so a lot of it is getting yourself out there and getting that first step of introducing yourself to other people and volunteering. Because I know it is hard for some people to get themselves out there and to meet new people, but a lot of it is meeting new people. So how I got started was I was lucky to grow up in an area such as White House, Ohio, where it's pretty close to Black Swamp Bird Observatory, where they ban birds. So that's where I learned about the process. They've been taking volunteers for a while. So I would look around to see if there's any bird banding stations or projects near you. I don't know if he'll be banding this year, but I do know Tom Bartlett also bands around Central Ohio and in Kelly's Island. So it's just meeting those people, also going to talks such as this, meeting people who do band birds. So I met bird banders from going to Ohio Bird Talks. And really that's a big part, is just a network. And then if you become really interested in it, I would suggest maybe even studying it in college like I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the networking piece there. Networking is always incredibly important when you're looking at any function or activity you might be interested in, for sure.
Yeah.
Right before I got cut off there, you were talking about the wood ducks and their molting. Can you go in to a little more detail about why ducks or birds molt?
Yes, so they do molt. Let me go back, see if I could go back. So basically their feathers, they become very worn and they need to molt them to replace them periodically. The molting stage is different in every species, just so they become strong and can still fly, basically. So in this case, especially the nesting season, it's really rough on these birds. And you could tell when you're monitoring nesting birds, they'll start to look really rugged as the nesting season goes on, because they're putting a lot of their resources towards raising a young. So this is an opportunity for them to grow those feathers back, to put a lot more resources back into themselves, so they are healthy for the next breeding season. And just as a reminder for the wood ducks, at least, not all birds do this. You'll have to look up for each bird how they're different, but wood ducks do an eclipse molt, a complete molt, where the body feathers are molted out first and then the primary or flight feathers are next. So that's why they can't fly. But they can by October.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. Let's see. Well, Anne, do you have any advice for young birders out there, or maybe people interested in banding birds or getting into the work that you're doing? Any advice on how to maybe be more successful?
Yeah, so my advice would really be to look at like I said, the events near you. So I know that the metro parks, they have a lot of different events depending on what part of Ohio you're in. The Ohio Young Birders Club is also very big if you are a young birder. And also just going out there and just birding in general, a lot of the places in Ohio are popular for birders, and you'll meet people. And just by talking to people on the trail and, you know, asking, what birds did you see today? The Ohio birders are pretty friendly people. So you'll start to recognize them after a while, and then you'll start to get to know them. So again, it just all goes back to meeting people out there and getting yourself out there as well.
Yeah, certainly. And if you are interested in a birding project, or at least a beginner birding project, we are going to have, Paradise is going to have a birdathon, a 24-hour birding marathon in May. It's going to be May 14th through the 15th. So if anybody's interested in doing a beginner birding project, we would be happy to pair you with an experienced birder that would take you around the Bi-County, Marion, Mauro counties, and show you some of the better spots and help you do some IDs. So that will be a pretty exciting project.
Yeah.
So Anne, any last minute things you want to share with our viewers here? I didn't see any questions on the Facebook page.
Really good luck for this year's breeding season. Don't get discouraged if you don't get a wood duck in your box right away. Sometimes it takes them a while to find it. And also, if you do get any other fun species, such as maybe a squirrel or owl, enjoy it as well.
Excellent advice. Perfect. All right. Well, Anne, hey, we surely appreciate you doing this talk with us tonight. And did you share your contact details in case people have further questions?
Yes, let me get that up again.
All right. And we're going to do our best to post this to our YouTube channel. So you can just log on to YouTube and search Paradise Nature Center, and we'll be on there. And this will also be archived on our Facebook page as well.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Well, Anne, again, thank you so much. And we definitely hope to have you back soon to do more bird talk.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it was. All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.